Okay, so we're once again talking about the film festival, the Blood in the Snow Canadian Film Festival, and the history of really Canadians in this genre, probably a lot deeper than you think. So we're going to bring in Kelly Michael Stewart. He's the founder and director of the festival. Look forward to it. It's November 23rd to the 26th. So when we come back on the other side, get ready, as you can see by the skull and David Bastel's severed leg, which is why it's there. See, look at that. It's not because he's hungry. It's that we didn't weird out here. We will talk to Kelly Michael Stewart on the other side. Coming up November 23rd to the 26th, and now in studio, here's the creepy music. I play this in my bedroom. I don't know.
Okay.
Someone's creepy and someone else is sexy. I think that's what we found out with this genre. And Kelly Michael Stewart is in. Bits is the name of the film festival, Blood in the Snow. So great to have you here, Kelly.
Oh, thanks for having me. Thanks a lot. It's really great.
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, too. When people think about this genre, and maybe even Canadians, because we're supposed to be the kinder, gentler souls, some of the more graphic and scary movies that have ever been made come from the minds of Canadians, and I don't know where maybe you draw a line in the sand necessarily, but I would think that Black Christmas probably is on that list.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's a big part of our history of Canadian films. I mean, we have some pretty notable filmography of people that have. Probably the most notable one is David Cronenberg.
Oh, there's a real.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what was going. Like when I was a kid and I saw Shivers.
Yeah.
It's like what happened in his house?
Yeah.
Why is he pulling liver-like things out of your stomach? It was unbelievable.
Yeah,
gore.
Absolutely. Yeah, that and The Brood. And
The Brood was another bad one.
Yeah, I mean, there's incredible. I mean, and I think it really sent the benchmark of like how Canadian films are made, because I think he showed that you could make those kinds of films here in Canada and not have to go to Hollywood and not compromise either. So, I mean, what's great about doing horror films is that they're a little subversive, a little bit underground, and that works for an out of Hollywood formula.
Well, as we talked before, you got on the air that very often when you talk about things like the horror genre, we even talked about it in terms of sports when you're a wrestling fan or those that would go to Comic-Con. It's not that you just kind of like that lifestyle, because it is a lifestyle.
Yeah,
it's you attend the films, you buy the paraphernalia, you go to shows, you go to screenings, you go to see the actors. It becomes part of your daily life. Therefore, even though it may not be what some would call mainstream, which now you could probably even argue that, now that you have the Walking Dead, which would have been, I think, 25 years ago, all the zombie stuff would have been laughed at, and that's why you saw those kind of campy movies, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes and all that weird stuff where it was kind of funny. Now I don't think you can say that anymore. I think it's mainstream.
Oh, very much. I absolutely agree. And I think even with shows like Stranger Things, this has become a huge phenomenon. You've seen obviously the box office of It, and that's really, really big numbers on that. And I think actually of the things that are coming out of Hollywood or even on TV and stuff like that, those are the more interesting stories that are being told. And so I think there's definitely the reason. And you're right that when you look at older films like George Romero's film like Dawn of the Dead and like that, they're certainly popular, but much more in an underground kind of way.
Totally.
And then The Walking Dead was basically taking the same formula and putting it in a much more mainstream audience, and it's changed everything.
So do you think the hardcore that would have been familiar with the Romero films, they know all the lines, they have these film festivals, and then they see, The Walking Dead, Fear the Walking Dead. Are they excited that it's been elevated to a more public venue, or are they like, thanks for ripping us off? Thanks for ripping off the guys who really started it. How do they see it as fans?
Well, I mean, I can't speak for everyone, but just from my general, I can only speak for myself and the people that I know, and I haven't heard any kind of negative feedback at all. I mean, I see just as much people fans of that stuff as they do for that. It's like, I think there's a bit of sense of like, finally people get it. Because there's always it's the one thing, the strange thing about horror films is it's the one genre you have to explain to people. You don't have to explain why you like it. You don't have to explain to someone why you like action movies. You don't have to explain why you like a comedy. They're like, why do you like horror movies? And I think it's finally got to the point now where people don't have to explain it as much, and it's like that they can just go, oh yeah, I because now it's like, yeah, I dig that too. Yeah, and that's really kind of, so the dialogue for people that are the hardcore horror fans has opened up a lot more. That way.
Let's get into some of the history of what we're going to be seeing here later on in the month of November. This is year number 6. You're the founder of this festival. What went into it the first year where you thought, you know what, this is a good idea. I want to start this film festival. Here's how we're going to start it, and why did you decide to do it at that time?
Yeah, and it didn't happen that way at all. Because what happened, it was interesting, was and this is one of the things where just one of like cosmic energy just kind of happened to make it happen the way it did, and really the films came first, because one of the questions I always get is there enough Canadian genre films to justify a film festival? And what actually happened was the films came first. So what happened in 2012, I was hosting a monthly horror night called Fright Nights at the Projection Booth Theater that used to be on Gerrard. And I used to be a film writer. I used to write for different film outlets in the city, like Toronto Film Scene, and I also write for Fangoria magazine at the time. And so I got kind of known for that a little bit.
Fangoria, that's a pretty big magazine in that format.
It's very big. Yeah. It's kind of in limbo right now. But my a friend of mine, Chris Alexander, was the editor of it for about 6 years, and he actually was out of Oakville. So even though the magazine's out of New York City, he was running out of Oakville, and so he brought on writers like myself that he knew. You work with people right? So we were brought in, and so that's why there was a huge Canadian component of that. And then Rue Morgue magazine, which is the other big horror magazine, it is out of Toronto. So those two things, we had major press out of Toronto already. Then we've had Midnight Madness and Toronto After Dark. So there was really kind of like that. There was roots in it. So I was hosting my monthly movie night and just doing my thing, and I had a bunch of filmmakers around the summertime of that year message me and go, Kelly, I need somewhere to premiere my film. It didn't get into Fantasia or Toronto After Dark. Now, those are international film festivals, so they play films from all around the world, so they can only play a certain amount of Canadian films.
Sure.
So they were getting, it wasn't like, they weren't supporting Canadian films. It's just like, they're international, they got to play a bit of everything. So what happened was they would take 3 or 4 of the features, and these other great films didn't have a home. So they came to me about playing my monthly night. So at first it was going to be, okay, well, rather than play them each month, because I was just doing a monthly night, let's do it over one weekend. And I was going to call it Fright Nights Blood in the Snow Weekend, like it's a tagline.
Sure.
And someone suggested to me, well, that sounds like a film festival. And I went, okay, sure. And this is like about 10 weeks before the date of it. Wow. So I was just like, so I didn't have a volunteer team. Yeah. I didn't have it wasn't like, because now, normally the way a film festival works, you submit online to like certain sites like Film Freeway and Without a Box. And you submit your film. We have a jury that picks the films and like that. It wasn't like that at all. It was like I just had a bunch of films and I programmed them over a whole weekend, and it did extremely well. It came together very, very last minute, but we had 2 sellout screenings. We had MTV come out and interview us and stuff like that, and we had it really became like a phenomenon, like really fast. And so before I even had a chance to even think about it, we had a film festival.
Yeah.
So it was really only in year 2. At the end of year 1, we after we finished the fest and it was a success, then all the people that kind of volunteered last minute, I mean, none of them even had real roles. They were just kind of standing in the lobby helping, like, oh, what do you need done now? Like, it was like that. Like, so we actually registered as a nonprofit. We picked a programming team. We got a bit of a small staff together, and we moved to the Carlton, and we were there for 3 years. And then we were at Cineplex Yonge and Dundas last year, and then we moved up yet again to the Royal Cinema, which is where we're at this year.
Now, the Royal Cinema, for those in are wanting to come to it in Toronto, what are we talking? What's the location of the Royal Cinema?
It's in Little Italy, near, I would say, near Bathurst and College.
Okay.
Like that, just so it's like that. So it's and it's kind of like the main destination for film festivals in the city.
Okay.
They're actually a post-production house during the day, and there's a huge theater, 380 seat theater that with the curtains and the whole bit, kind of thing like that. Really kind of old school. So it's a really good match for us, because that's what they do. They basically play a lot of specialty programming and a lot of film festivals, and that just fits perfectly with what we're doing.
And what are we looking at for that festival coming up? How many films are going to be part of it? And it's over the course of the 23rd of November through the 26th.
Yeah,
so it's
4 days.
It's going to be 4 busy days.
4 very busy days. We have so what we do is we have 10 programs over the whole weekend. 9 of them are features with a short that opens each of them.
Okay.
And then we have a shorts program. And what's cool about the shorts program is that we put that right in prime time. Because a lot of times the shorts programs get kind of put into the afternoon slot, and it's actually one of our biggest sellers. We put that on Saturday night. We do that. We also have industry, because there's a lot of filmmakers come to that. We have filmmakers come from all across Canada, right? We had filmmakers from Halifax to Victoria last year, and they come, and we have industry panels on the Thursday and Friday. The nearby Monarch Tavern, and then we have networking industry parties. We have a filmmakers breakfast, and we do that. That's the industry component of the fest.
Yeah.
And then there's the public component of it, and then we have those are the programs. And what's unique about our fest too is not only is it that it's all Canadian films, but they're just about all of them are all premieres. I think 14 of the 32 films that we're playing this year are either Canadian or world premieres. So.
Wow.
It was funny years ago. So the Dead Zone, which I think was that Cronenberg. I think it was Cronenberg,
yeah.
And in the Stephen King novel, the opening scene was at my elementary school in Stouffville, Ontario.
Yeah.
I knew kids in that opening scene, and no one had really, done a Christopher Walken impression at that point. And it kind of a lot of it came there with the hair sticking straight up. Is there a qualification? I know musically, what happens with radio stations, what it qualifies to be CanCon. Is it the same thing for what makes it a Canadian necessarily horror film?
And what's interesting is that's something we've had to grapple with. In fact, one thing we did was this year is we did open it up a little bit. So actually, we can't announce the lineup yet, but 2 of our features are actually international directors. One's from the UK and the other one's from the US. But it was all shot in Canada with a Canadian crew, produced in Canada, like literally every single other aspect.
Because Child's Play would be that category too, is it not? Child's Play is an American movie, but I don't. Do they not shoot it up here?
Oh, there's so much stuff. See, that's the thing. There's so much stuff.
See, I think all of Child's Play is shot here.
Yeah. See, that's the thing. There's so many films that are and actually, the interesting side note about what the people that play Blood in the Snow, I've been told by festival directors in the States that the quality of the films that coming out of Canada are a lot higher than a lot of the U.S. stuff that they're getting submitted. So if you look at a lot of the U.S. genre festivals, they're playing a lot of Canadian content. And my theory is why is that because we're basically Hollywood North, and all these shows, like even Star Trek and Suicide Squad and Deadpool, all that stuff is shot up either in Vancouver and Toronto. And so what happens is that the people that are making the films that are playing Blood in the Snow are actually, their day job is being crew members on these shows. So for example, we had a film called The Unseen that played last year, and it was about this guy that gradually went invisible. And his day job is doing special effects for movies. So he was the main special effects guy for Deadpool and Star Trek. And his team was nominated for an Oscar, but he wanted to direct his own movie, so he went and did that. So this is the kind of the caliber of people that we're getting. These aren't just we do get a bit of everything. We do have the up and coming filmmakers. It's
not Mike and I decided.
I've got some ideas.
Movie in our basement.
Well, you know what? We get that too. It really does cross the board. That's what's really fascinating. I mean, we have films that are made for like a few $1,000s to a few $1 million that play the fest side by side. And and that's why it makes it so competitive to get in. It's not like, oh, I made a movie, I'm going to play it.
Right.
It's a very tough call that we have to do every year for that. But that's my theory of why that too, because the technical component of it's so strong.
Now your build is a Canadian film festival. Has there ever been, or maybe if you're forecasting the future, will there ever be you know, a time where you sit there and say, you know what, maybe I have to open it up a little more than just Canadian? Are you strict and kind of cemented that you want this to be a Canadian film festival only?
Yeah, you know, something we've talked about in the past. I mean, like, do we want to branch it out? I think I would never rule out anything.
Sure.
I mean, I didn't even know I was going to be doing this 6 years ago. So who knows, right? I think, in fact, a colleague of mine, a friend, asked me in July of that year, said, "Did you ever want to start a film festival?" And I went, "Heck no." Yeah. And 3 months later, I had the fest. So, you never know with that kind of stuff like that. I will say that if we ever decided to, if we ever got to the point, like, because you never know, if there was a dip in the industry and there just wasn't enough things to like that, maybe we would open it up and have it, we have talked at times maybe having I mean, this year, like I said, we opened up to international co-productions. But not that we had to, but we just wanted to have more things to pick from.
Sure, absolutely.
So I mean, I think I think theoretically, if we did, we would always have like a massive Canadian component of it, and it wouldn't be like other festivals where the Canadian stuff was a small part. That part I can guarantee you. But you never rule anything out.
Because I think if you like the genre, which I do, it means at some point that you like being scared. I think for anyone going to the genesis of why that's attractive to you. And so that's why sometimes even the more unbelievable, there's a buy-in factor that I think you have to have. There's nothing worse than sitting with someone who starts predicting what's going to happen a couple of minutes. I'll make my own horror film by bringing my own chainsaw, and I'll sit beside that guy, and a head's being severed. What makes, I would say, necessarily even the line of what would be called the horror genre? For instance, if I'm looking at Hostel, or I'm looking at Saw, are those called horror films necessarily?
Oh yeah, actually, I mean it's they have like there's like subgenres of it. That would be under the category of torture porn. Like that.
Torture porn.
That's actually the terminology.
Oh God, I like that. I really do.
But having said that, most of the films actually that we get are anything like that. I mean, we and there's very few films that we play with a guy in a mask running out with a knife. I think maybe year one we had one that was like that. But really, for the most part, and what we constitute a horror film too is a very large umbrella. We've actually stretched it more and more. We've even played films that are like we have one of the films we have this year is a full-on action film. We have we're open to sci-fi films. We've had what I call dark dramas. We had a film called Kidnap Capital last year that was actually about illegal immigration into Phoenix, Arizona. It's known as the Kidnap Capital of the world, and they were trapping people in their basement and saying, unless you give us $3,000, we're not going to let you out.
Phoenix has this reputation of
they're known as the Kidnap Capital of the world because of that.
Okay, I did not know that.
Yeah, and it was it's based on real like a real issue. Like it was a dramatic film, but it was based on real things that happened, and these are like true stories of people that happened. So there's an example of what I call real life horror that we've also branched into that too. So we definitely have stretched it. We kind of refer to ourselves more as a genre festival than a horror festival now, because of that. And I think and this kind of relates to what you're saying about expanding kind of thing like that too. I think that's kind of more the area that we're looking at now, is that we're kind of more expanding into like what would constitute a horror film. I think in the first couple of years it was probably a bit more rigid, and then now we're kind of like, wow, we're getting these great films. I mean, like we should try and find a place for it. And we played a film called She Almost Burned a couple of years ago and actually won Best Picture at our fest, and that was another one that was a little left of center. It was just like about religious fundamentalism, and they were like burning people at the stake for like that too. Again, based on a lot of crazy real stuff and fanaticism. And again, we fit that in, and we didn't know. I was reluctant to play it that year because I was like, I don't know if our base is going to like that, and it went over extremely well. So I think people like to. I think the thing that the common link with all that is like isn't so much as they want to be scared or grossed out. I think it's like they want to see interesting underground, unique stories, and and things that are kind of like a little. That aren't predictable and a little less, that's not the mainstream thing that you're going to get in the cineplexes.
Gotcha. Kelly Michael Stewart joins us in studio. He is the founder, director of Blood in the Snow Canadian Film Festival, November 23rd to the 26th at the Royal Cinema. That's 608 College Street in the heart of Little Italy here in Toronto. So going back to your first fascination with this sort of film, when did you start loving it? Was this something that as a kid that this you were immediately attracted to, or did this happen in your teens, or what was the first instance that you sat there and you went, oh, I love this, and I want more of it?
Yeah. Geez, it's hard to detect which one. I think probably the first one that really hit me in a big way was Poltergeist. That one was really kind of, and it was neat about that. It was made around the same time as E.T. You know, Steven Spielberg produced it.
Yep.
Tobe Hooper directed it. But it was interesting because that movie, it was a PG film technically, because no one actually dies in that movie. And so like that, but it's scary as hell, right?
Yeah,
I found the little American midget woman. That's what's freaking me out.
Yeah. She's
There's something going on here. I was like,
yeah. No, it's
Ew.
like that. And I think that one really drew me in, and that and The Shining. But I think the thing that really drew me in the most was I really was obsessed with Vincent Price and the Universal horror movies like Frankenstein and Dracula.
So really classic.
Wow.
Wow.
I kind of came from that school of it, and I have to admit I don't think I. So I was much more into, the Edgar Allan Poe stuff and stuff like that. That's everything before Night of the Living Dead, and then and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So 68 to 73, whatever, kind of like that is like that was kind of the transition where the modern horror kind of came in, and the modern horror stuff didn't really hit me, I think, until my 20s. I think that's when I really started, and I think watching those films and realizing, wow, there's a lot more to it. Like using the George Romero example, I mean, all 6 of his Living Dead films, there's a subtext to it. It's not just zombies walking around, kind of like that too. I mean, Dawn of the Dead is about commercialism and talking about consumerism. It all takes place in a mall.
You know who's in that? People go, well, who could possibly, as I said, Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, George Clooney.
Mm-hmm.
George Clooney was in, maybe it was both of them. And the guy who plays Phil Dunphy in Modern Family is in the George Romero Dawn of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the guys who's stuck in the mall. Because I think, did they shoot that in Edmonton?
No, are you thinking about the remake or the original?
Maybe it's the remake.
Yeah, there was a remake as well that had Sarah Polley in it.
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, that was the remake. That was the remake one. The original films were all made in Pittsburgh. The first 3 films were made in Pittsburgh.
Okay. So I saw the remake.
Yeah. And then, but interesting though, and it's interesting, right geographically where this show is being broadcast is actually where George Romero lived for 15 years.
He lived there.
He just died recently, and he made his last 3 films here in and around Toronto.
Oh.
So if you watch Land of the Living Dead with Dennis Hopper,
yep.
If you go into like the Path and like that too, there's a thing called Fiddler's Green that takes place. That's the main fortress of the.
Yeah.
That's just like in the Path for like Bay Street and like that. It's just like that too. And so both Diary of the Dead and Land and Survival of the Dead, his last film, they were all shot in and around Toronto and stuff like that. So it's kind of like so Toronto does have that. I know people who worked on the films actually. It's quite incredible.
The psychological films. So again, you talk about the subdivisions of horror. So was it When a Stranger Calls? Is that when they have the masks on and they don't say anything?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, those ones I watch them and they drive me nuts because I'm like, go upstairs, get a stick. My son's like, what is no, I'm in the film now. I'm planning what I would do. Get some gasoline, go to the roof. You always got to go to a high point. Get like a golf club. Take the end off, sharpen it.
Yeah.
And
well, it does have an impact on how people behave because
you go crazy watching those things.
Yeah, because my mom says that she's always locked the door to have a shower. And like I remember as a kid going like just wanting to get like my toothbrush or something, and then she's like, why do you always lock the door? It's like it's because of Psycho. Yeah. It's just like I mean it really has these things do have an impact on how we behave. Right?
Well, that story scares me for other reasons. I got to be honest, Kelly.
Yeah.
I don't maybe that's another genre. I don't know, but I'm getting scared.
Yeah.
And I just think that and Dave and I were saying before you came on, you don't just like them. You love them.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, when you're looking forward to, once Hollywood gets a hold of it, a major sort of film release that's going to be horror, are there those that you have been waiting for, and let's say and it can be cultish at times, that fan base is waiting for, and it comes out and people go, oh my God, that was terrible. That wasn't even close. Is there any that come to mind that should have been so much better, and then they get released and you're like, oh, that was so disappointing. I was waiting for that, and
there's
they
too
blew
many
it.
to even list.
Yeah. What ones were a tank for you, and not even necessarily box office wise, just for those that love the format, that maybe they had an idea, or maybe it was taken from a comic book or an author, and then it finally comes out and you go, boy, that wasn't even close.
Yeah. Oh, geez, I'm trying to think of off the top of my head, but I mean, I think the biggest one really is the usually the remakes. I think the remakes tend to kind of like they tend to really. They tend to be I don't know, just derivative and kind of like that too. And I'm not really a fan. I tend to avoid any of the remakes. I didn't, I couldn't care less about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remakes, and I couldn't care less about.
Like, is Rob Zombie big in the format? Because of course I told the story that when House of a Thousand Corpses came out,
yeah,
I was the second voiceover guy. So all my, I did a lot of voiceovers at that time.
Yeah.
But I never got to be the guy who said, "This is my big line." Yeah. Starts in theaters Friday, and then they're like, "That's great." I'm like, "Anything else?" Yeah, give us a. Starts in theaters Friday. This kind of stuff. And I was like, I walked out. I thought I was the, that was the greatest guy in the world.
Yeah.
But Rob Zombie, because of what goes through his head, and the with White Zombie and the psychedelic aspect of what he does musically, had some, the House of a Thousand Corpses wasn't for everybody. And, you're waiting for that happy ending.
His stuff divides people. I mean, I would say the film. I like his Halloween remakes. I personally like them. Those films divide people more than anyone I know.
Really?
People get angry about those films, and they really get upset about it. And same with Devil's Rejects. People either love that film.
I do. It's upsetting, but I love it.
Do you have time? Do you have time for a Rob Zombie story?
We can talk. Yeah. I tell you, we've been looking all. Once he told me you were coming in, I was looking forward to this the whole time.
Okay, so
by the way, the Dodgers won last night 3-1. Is that what you're interested in? Fine. Now back to the good stuff.
Okay, so I was lucky enough to be at the world premiere of Lords of Salem with Rob and Sherry Zombie were at it, and it was at Midnight Madness. And the way Midnight Madness parties work is they have their cast and crew party or whatever before the screening because it's at midnight. So we were at a bar at 10 o'clock, and Rob Zombie and his wife come in, and they were friendly, and I say hi and like that, and we pose for photos, and I could tell he was nervous. I'm just like, it's just like, are you looking forward to the screening tonight? And he's like, nope. And it's just like, okay. And then I talked to Sherry, and she just started going, like, shaking her head, like, no. Like,
she would scare me even if I met her in real life just because of the role she plays in those movies.
Oh, she's a sweetheart.
And if she started doing that high-pitched giggle, I'm like, I'm out of here, man. Because she's really good in those movies, and she scares the shit out of me.
Yeah. And no, they were both really friendly, but they were both nervous. And he comes across on TV and his videos and stuff as such a confident guy. I'm like, why is he so nervous?
That surprises me.
And so I'm in this weird position at this party, reassuring him that his premiere is going to go well, and I of course no one had seen this movie yet, and because it was the world premiere, and I assumed the film was going to be like the Halloween movies or House of a Thousand Corpses. Like I had a certain idea of what a Rob Zombie film was, and and Lords of Salem is like 2001 on acid. Like it's but a horror movie of it. It's an art house movie, and so I was trying to reassure him that it was going to go well, and my argument was, it's a very rowdy crowd. They'll be cheering through the whole thing like they generally do. Yeah. And when I went to the screening, 20 minutes into it, the reaction to it actually was was quite good, but it's not a yell and cheer kind of movie. So like within 15 minutes of the film, I think people realized it's not that kind of movie, and they kind of quieted down, and the rest of it. And the next day, I got to interview Rob, and so I saw him again the next day, and he said to me, he told me, he said, now you see, that didn't reassure me about the rowdy thing because it was an art house movie, and he was paranoid about showing it at that kind of crowd. And the thing was, and he didn't even tell his investors really what the story was really about. If you read the original synopsis on IMDb, they completely shot a different movie than when he told them. So he was also worried about all the investors in the audience seeing a movie that they didn't know that they were really invested. Because that was one of my questions: is like, how did you get finance for this movie? It's like,
but I think that's a historically, sort of accurate way of looking at how movies get made. Because I watched that. Betty and Joan feud that they'd put on, where they go through Joan Crawford and Betty Davis, and it was Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Yeah.
And you looked at why they were put in that film at the time, and you looked at maybe how out of the box it was a little bit, especially for Betty Davis, and you start getting back to the origin of. Why make this film? What is the film supposed to be? Well, it is a horror film. I've never seen it.
Yeah.
It's
a fantastic movie. Yeah.
It looks scary. Like it does.
It is kind of. Yeah. I mean, Betty Davis. I mean, I think it's a career-defining role. I mean, I think like that. I mean, you know, it's funny. I think I knew her as an older actress, obviously with my age, kind of like that. Then as a younger,
we all did, sure.
Yeah, we all did. And then it's like needing to go back and like, oh, she was like a beautiful leading lady. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like that was interesting. But at the time,
Shelley Winters apparently was good in her time too, and I just don't see it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, different kind of thing.
There's a reason the Poseidon sank, and I thought it was because of her. I'll be honest. Sorry, you were saying.
You should watch her in Night of the Hunter. There's another one that's kind of like a horror movie.
Yeah.
Like that. Watch her on that. It's fantastic. But yeah, no, that movie is like that too, because it really is, because there's a great example of taking something and making that you think it's going to be a certain way and then making it subversive. Because here's someone that you would never expect, like Bette Davis, to be anything but glamorous, and then have her as this cackling old Biddy in it, kind of like that. I'm like it was just so shocking to have to see that, especially if you know where she came from in Hollywood and stuff like that. I mean, it was just it was bold. I think it was a bold move for both those actresses to do that, because the last thing you want to do is show yourself as being unattractive,
right.
and being and look, you know, they would just go out of their way not to. It's like when you watch old movies and there's been a tornado and they still got their makeup and hair perfect. I mean, that's the actresses not wanting to look bad because they think it's going to ruin them getting future parts, right? Yeah. So it was a huge risk at the time, them doing that, even though they were getting older. I think that's probably was it. I'd say, well, screw it. We're not getting the roles now anyway.
So the Blood in the Snow Canadian Film Festival takes place November 23rd to the 26th at the Royal Cinema on College Street. I before we say goodbye for this morning,
because I have to ask you a horror movie question. But you know what? Let's do this before you get to that. Right?
I was just going to ask him tease some of the films.
We'll tease after, because I want to know what, because I've never asked this question of you, though the years we've known each other. Here comes the creepy music in the background.
Creepy music in the background. Okay.
What movie, whether it's supposed to be in that genre or not, what movie still scares you? What scares you as a movie? You watch it even tomorrow night, and you're scared. Because I got a couple, some that really, as a 54-year-old man, shouldn't be that scary, and yet still terrifying.
Man, that's. Can you pass it to Kelly while I think?
Do you have a movie that scares you? I mean, you've seen
one. I'm going to confess, the film that made me scream like a little girl.
Yeah.
Was the last shot of Carrie.
Carrie was a scary movie.
Yeah. Because you know what? It was, but you know why? Because it wasn't. Sorry, I'm gonna wreck it for you now. But it was 90 minutes of it. Basically, it was a high school drama. Like really, nothing really scary
until the end.
Until the end, and then that last 30 seconds of that film, I had relaxed, because sometimes when you go into a movie, you know you're gonna be scared, so you tense up and you're waiting for that thing to jump out of the closet. Brian De Palma is such a genius that he wore me down to the point where I was just watching obviously with the supernatural element to it, but basically
Travolta was in it.
Yeah. I mean, but it was like really, I mean, until they go to the dance, it's really just it's most of the film is just a story about a kid trying to fit in. And boy, did I have my guard down, that movie.
And so even to this day, that will scare you, that movie.
I remember there was a retro screening of it a few years ago, and I watched it. And I mean, not to the same degree it did the first time. Yeah, it never does, but it was just but still, it still has that jolt. I mean, it's a.
I think my love of horror movies, scary movies, whatever you want to call it, doesn't quite get into the same category as you guys, so I'm not going to sit there and even try to compete with that. But I guess as a kid, just seeing, and I know this is probably lame compared to some of the other answers.
But sometimes lame movies that people say, like it depends on what you're afraid of.
Well, the thing is, the first time, and you got to remember when you saw them, I was a kid when I saw Freddy.
Well, you're really setting this up.
This time.
Oh, it's so okay.
When I see him for the first time, and the whole premise of that movie, it was like. It was kind of like,
you know what? That one did it for me too. I just had a memory, like I went blank when you were asking me a little bit, like what was the one kind of that. And I just wow. It
See,
just
I'm in my 40s now, so I look at that and go, okay, haha. Or Jason with the little gold mask. It's that's cute.
Yeah. But at the time, we're about the same age, and it's just like, that was one of the first time. That was the first time when I saw that much blood.
Yes.
That was the first time when I saw blood dripping from the ceiling.
See, like this guy watches blood movies daily. I'm surprised he's not part of your festival.
Yeah, it should be part of the festival.
Yeah.
My life is a horror story.
Well, I'm definitely going to have you both this year.
Oh, we're there. You can count it. We're going to be there.
Yeah.
I look at this, and especially this aspect of it.
Yeah.
And still, because you have stuff like this. Those wrong turn movies freak me out. Every time people go, hey, do you want to go camping? No. Especially in the hills somewhere, like you just
even when you're with the good-looking girls,
the
and stuff like that.
yeah, but that's not good.
Yeah.
But the sounds they make, they don't quite talk. They go in. There's a refrigerator full of this stuff. They're hiding under the grounds, and guys are going. I'm like, my wife's like, I can't believe we're married. Like, I seriously don't know how this is working.
Yeah.
That freaks me out. Anything to do with that, except I think by the time they got to wrong turn 7, get a GPS. Like, seriously, stop.
Yeah, really.
And then they had like weird guys on motors or on skidoos or something, and I think it kind of lost its southern charm a little bit.
Yeah.
But then there's other things, like I saw it the other day, that Planet of the Apes when they're cornfield, and the first time I remember as a kid, and they zoom in and they see the gorillas and there's, I was like, babes, I was just, it freaked me out. That movie freaked me out. It still kind of gives me the creeps.
Well, that's it. I think anything that's happened at the first, I was talking about my fandom of old Universal horror movies.
Yep.
Apparently, when those films, when they showed like dirt getting thrown onto a coffin, that was shocking to people. That had never been seen before.
Yeah, sure.
People were not used to seeing like things like that. Why would dirt onto a box? That was very, very gory.
Well, the shower, the psycho scene. I'm sure the censors were not wanting to see that.
No, exactly. It was completely unheard of at the time. I mean, that was really, and you could argue that was the birth of modern horror. It was like
I think it's a great point.
That really was a big moment.
You shouldn't be scared at Rumpelstiltskin, and yet maybe it's the little people. Maybe that's just what I don't like. I mean, the Wizard of Oz, I'm not a fan of for the same reason.
Oh, I think those flying monkey
monkeys
things,
are terrible.
that still freaks people out.
That combines the Planet of the Apes with the.
There you go.
People say you shouldn't say midgets, but what are you supposed to say? Small
damn
people,
dirty
I guess.
apes.
Yeah, damn dirty apes. See, that's where they blew it in the new ones.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, like, the humans are being chased around. They're like, hey, has anyone got the time?
Yeah.
Why are the humans talking like that? Like, what is the... No, the whole thing was when he talked.
Right.
That was the big surprise.
Yeah.
But no,
it'll never be the original will never be topped.
No, well, as you said, remakes very difficult to do, especially a significant and historically famous series that is difficult. Well, we're thrilled once again. The 23rd to the 26th at the Royal Cinema, so Little Italy. So if you want, you can get a nice dinner beforehand.
Early bird passes are available.
Yeah.
Yes, they are. Yeah, you can go to bloodinthesnow.ca and you can click on the ticket link there right now, and early bird passes are up there. And it gets you that pass gets you into everything the whole weekend long, and it's a really great deal. It works out to something like $7-8 a screening, so it's really
That's really good.
Yeah, we keep it really affordable, and then we'll have we'll be at Horrorama November 4th, and that's where we're going to announce our entire lineup, and all our tickets are going to go on sale that day. So so it's $11 advanced and $13 at the door, and so it's a fantastic event.
Now,
Awesome.
you don't dress up like Vincent Price or anything, do you? Do you dress up in something scary? do you come out like holding your head or something weird, or?
Well, I dress pretty dapper. I mean, for it. I mean, this jacket where I'm wearing now is usually my standard uniform. I do have a leopard jacket that scares people a little bit sometimes. There's a couple. I have to admit, there was one. Relating back to sports stuff. There, it's like I did see Don Cherry wear a jacket a few months ago. I go, I have to have that jacket for Blood and Snow. Yeah.
Outstanding. Well, we will. Come on here. Here we go.
There we go.
There.
What? We just become best friends? Yep.
Yeah, this was good.
Do karate in the garage?
Yeah.
Yep. It's time.
So once again, it's Bits. If you want to look it up, Twitter handle is at BITS Film Festival.
Yes.
And of course, go to its website itself, the Blood in the Snow Film Festival. You can get the early bird, which I would suggest doing. I mean, if all of a sudden you're seeing those kinds of movies for $7-8, you can't get anything for $7-8. So make sure you do that. Kelly Michael Stewart joined us here today. It's November the 23rd to the 26th. Thanks for coming in,
right.
Kelly.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're going to be there.
What? We just become best friends? Yep.